Grandmama used to pray, oh Lord, please save them from the evil snares and all the dangers that entangle. Yea, though they walking through the valley of the shadows, just prepare and make them fit for every battle. Because I know they bound to come, and I know they bound to fall, but in your bounty, Lord, preserve their beautiful. Right, we still surviving off of grandma's prayers, surrounded by the jungle and the lion's den. Tread light, cause these traps isn't conspicuous. They hide right in plain sight, thinking we don't see them when they linger. Look right beneath the surface, then leave a trail of corpses. Crisis, prices, your life a disposable commodity. Like living in a fantasy, conditioned to believe that the system even cares. Whether selling CDs or walking or driving or reading, look, they don't even need a reason. It's just you breathing and being black. When it's such a pretty fall, it don't seem like we falling at all, at all. It's just a GMO dream, where things are never really what they seem. Please cue the violins, tell them just to play me something pretty, cause this gritty city got me screaming bloody murder. City got me screaming. This gritty city got me on some. Look, get your hand up on my pocket. Distraction, so lazy they use the same tactics. Like condom with some trinkets, just don't let them get to thinking. That light bulb gets a blinking. You know niggas and ideas. Oh dear, my dear, you may not know me, but I know you very well. Foresight, they say hindsight is 20/20. Well, tell me something, we gotta see that history is on repeat. And maybe it takes the beat and the melody to speak a little louder than the message in the clouds or the essence in the air. I swear, my God is just so clear that a system driven by fear can never give us nothing but more of the same things. Oh, when it's such a pretty fall, it don't seem like we falling at all. It's just a GMO dream, where things are never really what they seem. Please cue the violins, tell them just to play me something pretty, cause this gritty city got me screaming. It's murder. Got me screaming, got me. This gritty city got me on song.
It may appear a confusing blur of activity, each ant doing its own thing, but it can't be. Somehow the ants coordinate their actions so that large insects are overwhelmed, killed and carried back to the base.
Pairs is dying and my people are suffering. The money's still low, you should see how they budgeting.
Watch what comes out your mouth.
People are suffering.
It's elementary, they want us all gone eventually.
Pairs is dying, people are suffering. The money's still low, you should see how they budgeting. Pairs is dying and my people are suffering, cause the money's still low.
They want us all gone eventually.
I swear to God, living in this economy's like a robbery. The government taxing me when they owe me for my property. You niggas act like you happy to live in poverty. When I feel like a king, I gotta make these fools acknowledge me. I'm royalty and loyal to the feeling of it. The contrast make it look thuggish. We talk, walk, and look rugged naturally. Nothing sad to see, we all a part of this tragedy. I'm mad at you, so why you mad at me?
We headed for the times of the 9, watch out 6. Sun cycle on the rise, moon cycle out the mix. Living on this planet of the snakes and the crucifix. Pardon yourself as I unk my way through, marching with my A-boom boom, making my debut. Like great balls of fire, nothing could save you. In these replenishing times, I honor my dead, making my ancestors proud when it's off with your head.
Does my pencil possess potential to change mentals? Yes. Show what you can in this pack with the essential less. What is essential to keep it as sharp as a pencil? Yes. What is essential to keep it like a temple? Blast, alter the temple, keeping the beat simple and fresh. While they whimper and rash, I'm intuition like the simplest gas. Into tradition, I'm on a mission until I transition to give the up and coming a better existence.
I seen a beggar scorn reaching for a coin or two. The older we get, it switches up the point of view. And they anointed you, leader of the free world. Desolate minds confined to the B-girl. The most benevolent is evident who I be. Graffiti on the wall, the crew drew Ali. Zoo to our key, shifting on the paradigm. Raise the vibration, then go prepare the mind.
Define magnificent rare gem, dig deep. The omnipotent, all-seeing, I just speak the game plan. I pray for niggas, amen. Fat Sharpie, spray can, I'm made man. With suede vans, no street skating, no beat taking. For Pete's sake, he's a beast quaking, the scene shaking. No mistaking, the ants conquer the elephants. FTP, RBG, the rest develop.
What What's the ant's secret that makes them the most efficient predators on Earth, consuming more meat than lions, tigers, and wolves combined?
I'm way medicated, puff lion, lace sedated, and stay dedicated to culture that created the essence of the lessons now delivered in my presence. Kalonji called upon me, so now I pose the question: how is it that the blacks came in whips and chains, having nothing else to lose and everything to gain? Now niggas entertain for some whips and chains, a white dame and some fame. Is that shit not strange?
It's kinda hard holding down your dreams when you blacking in America with institutions set to bury you 6 feet underneath dirt for debt deep. Disciples psychological when making those ends meet and needs be. A hand feeds the other teasers. Gather thoughts, grab the Gatlin for good reason. In between success, devil's greed, a pine box, a mind jogs elusive.
And why I come off and camouflage, can't take cloth. Eating lentils and vegetable broth, but I ain't never been soft. Beating the lost and forsaken by any cost, bones aching, working hard, trying to bring home the turkey bacon, breaking laws of gravity. Fuck with the family and watch me savagely crush craniums and chest cavities to pray for the casualties. Cause my anatomy is naturally casually composed. This is self-construction for the soul.
I'm black dynamite, I'll blast you with my nitro. Spit a dope piece with a gold piece in a booth with 5 disciples. We channeling boot mind, the revolution sparker. With 8 bars, cigar smoking, some dark room on the altar. Watch the daughter work a mojo, walk the stage without a hype man. Electric verses turn a great crowd into light rain. Flood psyches with an ill beat and some brain food that's got hot. Fly wisdom, call starseed, the enlightener, that's side rock.
2012 and times are different yet the same. Nowadays the number of prisoners behind the cage outnumber amounts of those enslaved during the trades. And shame we killing ourselves over what set you claim. Getting shot instead of hang. Nothing changed for the better except the cheddar of corporate profit to gain. The more money in pockets, the more people in chains. Unite niggas who bang, destroy their main aim.
It's all connected, form a web like a Nazi. It's the people, Siafu is the army. Start a top contender, oil plots a new agenda. They even breathe on the track, sucker empty for dinner. All that garbage I penning, this right here's the ending. Words the venom, getting them wrapped in Egyptian linen. Coming for head, this rapper, Kali will shake the rafters. Only thing standing after, walking natural disaster, rapture.
What's happening, good people? I am Kalonji Changa. I represent the FTP movement. It's Black August. It's Black August. I represent the Black Power media as well, as many of you know. It's been a while. It's been a few ticks, but we back again. We're here because there's a lot going on. We have our main man, Mumia Abu-Jamal, going through a medical crisis. We have Leonard Peltier going through medical crisis. We have Imam Jamil Al-Amin, formerly H-Rap Brown, going through medical crisis. And today we want to talk to the people. We want to speak about some of the things that's going on and how you can assist and update folks on what's going on in these remnants of a movement. And I say remnants and because of the fact that, you know, it is fragmented to an extent. And I hate to say it, but I like to keep it a buck with my people because that's how we do around here. I have a few special guests coming on today. First, we'll be talking about, again, Mumia Abu-Jamal's health crisis. Doctors warn of imminent permanent blindness. Immediately after that, we will have a discussion around building a united front against fascism. But first, we're going to get to the Mumia business. I called on a few of my favorite long-term resistors and fighters in this liberation movement, people that we could trust to bring us that critical political theory and action. You know what I mean? Have my sister, Johanna Fernandez, and my brother and comrade, Gabe, in the building today. How y'all feeling?
Good. Considering. Thank you for having us.
Staying strong, brother. Trying to do what we can for our brother and for our elder.
No question, no question. And I am deeply appreciative because, you know, back in the day, I was a brother that was in church as a child. And I remember the preacher used to say, it's getting late in the evening. You know what I mean? And clearly for us, for many of us, we know that we have more ancestors than elders these days. And we also know that we've watched a number of different comrades who are principled come and go. And it's kind of left the floodgates open for BS. I'm not here to preach or pontificate today, but I'm just feeling away because of the fact that I think that sometimes we forget how serious our liberation movement is. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes the true struggle is within self. We're here for a reason today. Again, we're talking about Mumia Abu-Jamal. I want to start with you, Johanna, just to kind of give folks an idea as to why we're here today. And when we're talking about Mumia, the possibility of Mumia going blind, I want you to kind of give us a rundown and an understanding of what that means.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction. Your listening audience probably knows that Mumia Abu-Jamal is an imprisoned radio journalist, political prisoner of the 60s and 70s era, veteran Black Panther who faced execution in the 1990s. He was the only one of our political prisoners facing execution, and an international movement stopped the execution. And he's now serving life in prison without parole. He's wrongly charged with the killing of a white police officer in Philadelphia. He was railroaded in the courts, and the Fraternal Order of Police has made his case their cause célèbre in the worst of ways. Mumia fell ill in 2015. We saved his life then. He fell into a diabetic coma because the prison doctors administered steroids for his skin condition and didn't properly monitor him. When you administer steroids in large volumes and you don't monitor the patient, their blood sugar can rise. And that happened with Mumia. His blood sugar rose exponentially such that he fell into a diabetic coma, which in most cases leads to death, a swelling of the brain, which is known as encephalitis, and in many cases, the problem that we see today, 5 years later, which is that that crisis caused a problem in the retina of his eye, which requires immediate treatment, or he faces permanent blindness. So that's the context. Mumia has been complaining about this for approximately a year. His vision has been going dark, and there are multiple issues involved. This retinal crisis caused by the diabetic coma that he should never have fallen into, because Mumia doesn't have diabetes. But he also had cataract surgery, and in 10% of the cataract cases, the patient has to go back in because the lens that they put in your eye fogs up. That's a very basic procedure that can be done tomorrow, but they've stalled on that. So there are multiple things going on with his eyes, all of them curable, right? Fixable. One of them is dangerous because it can lead to blindness, and he needs treatment immediately. It's been over 7 months. He's had to file legal procedures internally within the prison to even get him the assessment he needs to move forward with these treatments and procedures. But they're stalling, they're engaging in the cruelty that defines this moment of the Trump administration, but the cruelty that defines prison life that's administered by a prison bureaucracy. So we're in a horrible situation. This is not just about Mumia, right? We have an entire prison system that is housing our elders. This is about elder abuse. The prison system exploded in the 80s and 90s, and now we have an aging population of people who need care, as most of our folks do, right, in later years, especially around vision problems. And the prison is doing what it does. It's barbaric and literally abusing our elders.
Thank you for that, Johanna. I'm looking and I'm listening to you, and I had the opportunity, as you know, to sit down with Mumia a little over a year ago, right, last year. And Mumia is not the brother to complain. I sat down with him for 4.5 hours, and he talked about everything but himself. He asked about other political prisoners. He asked about folks on the street. We laughed. You know, the only reason we remember that we were in prison at that particular moment is just seeing the guards and seeing, you know, the surrounding areas. Otherwise, everything was focused. Everything was on point. Not asking for anything. Mumia is a model prisoner, as we know. You know, he's been off death row for over a decade now. I want to ask Gabe, why do you think this type of playing cracker's advocate, why do you think that this type of treatment is going on with Mumia, who is an award-winning journalist, who is a brother who has put out, if not a dozen books or close to him since he's been in prison? And forgive me, I want to rewind because Johanna reminded me, she talked about our listening audience. I'm used to you all, and I'm used to Mumia, so we just jumped on like everybody already knows, like, you know, this is Johanna and Gabe, you know what I mean? You know what we do around here. If you don't mind, let me rewind the tape, give a brief bio of yourselves, and then we could kind of talk a little bit more about who Mumia is, because again, you know, and I'm self-critical a lot of times, being in this movement, we just jump in and we think that, you know, everybody listening has always been here. Some folks are listening right now. Yeah. So if you don't mind, give us a little background as far as why you are on the screen, and Johanna, you as well, if you don't mind. Forgive me for my.
We can have Johanna start.
Cool.
So I'm part of the movement to free Mumia Abu-Jamal, and the one of the founders of the campaign to bring Mumia home. I'm also a professor of history at Baruch College and the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. And I wrote a book on the Young Lords, and just abolitionist and believer in a different world. I mean, the system is just not working, hasn't been working, has never worked, but those contradictions are more acute than ever. And Mumia's long distance revolutionary, and he attracts folks who understand that the roots of the crises we're living through are deep, and we need solutions that are able to meet the depth of that crisis.
Okay.
And Brother Gabe, I have been working on behalf of the campaign to hopefully and soon come bring Mumia home from his incarceration, really for the better part of the last 25 years. I must salute the generals who recruited me into this work, Mama Pam Africa, Mama Pam and Mama Ramona Africa, who first sort of gave me the information that I've used to sort of figure out ways to not only work towards the freedom of Mumia Abu-Jamal, but also the Move 9, which of course was a major success and a major victory, as well as work on several other political prisoner campaigns, because we know that our PPs and prisoners of war must be supported and must be served and must be properly worked with and worked on. And in the current context, I work with the Mobilization for Mumia sort of movement, which is a organization of many of our Philadelphia-based organizers and many other folks as well internationally that are working to bring Mumia Abu-Jamal home, not now, but right now.
I appreciate y'all. I mean, you know, this is the first time I gave y'all intros like halfway through the show, but we all right, y'all family. But anyway, getting down back into the business. And again, I appreciate you all coming on last minute. Gabe, what do you think the reason is? You know, they're holding this brother, they've tortured him, you know, he's been through, you know, issues after issues. His whole body's been impacted and affected. He's lost family members, you know, throughout his incarceration. What's the problem? What you think? What's the deal?
I think that, first of all, I want to thank the global community for keeping this man alive. I think that if it were not for the folks from Germany, from France, from South Africa, from Mexico, from throughout the United States, who have literally been organizing, protesting, demonstrating, writing to DAs, writing to governors, writing to congressmen, writing to departments of corrections to make sure that he received treatment, this man would no longer be with us. And so the reality is that they know the impact of what could happen if anything were to happen, actually, quote unquote, on their watch. And so in Mumia's own words, he said, you know, I believe they are slow walking me to blindness. And this is somebody, to your point, who literally spends his days behind the walls, either reading or writing. And so obviously, when it comes to a vision issue, we can understand how that would severely impact one's livelihood and ability to sort of figure out ways to navigate that particular incarceration experience if one cannot see. And I think that it's important to also raise, Brother Kalonji, that, you know, one of the things that's been talked about within the legal framework and the legal case and the case of people supporting him is the Mumia effect, which Johanna talked about, which is this idea that we can't just focus just on Mumia. Just to kind of share with the audience just some numbers, 11% of state and federal prisoners actually have some type of vision disability. It's important to note this because it's not just Mumia Abu-Jamal. He is part of a larger context of prisoners that we're kind of working through, right? March 2024, the Pennsylvania prison population, there were 36,000 that actually had a severe, there were 36,000. And we're talking about those, that number being in the context of 11.4, if you were to sort of break down what the number could be possibly for folks who were blindness, right? In Pennsylvania, there are 32,000 who are legally blind, just Pennsylvania's period. There are 32,000 that are legally blind. There are 160,000 that have a severe visual impairment. And of that 160,000, 140,000 are 65 years or older. And we know that Mumia Abu-Jamal just turned 71 several months ago. I shall also state, because we're on Black Power Media, that as we all know with other cases, unfortunately, in regards to our public health, Black folks are at the bottom, but perhaps at the highest rate than other ethnicities and cultures when it comes to reported cases of blindness. And so this issue is bigger than all of us because Mumia becomes now part and parcel of a conversation around the health disparities and the public health disparities that are going on for Black folks inside the prisons and prisoners in general. And so Mumia Abu-Jamal can become somebody that, as he always proclaims, that fighting for Mumia Abu-Jamal in this case and meet the demands in this case will provide health for all the other thousands who are also suffering with severe blindness or visual impairment throughout the Commonwealth and throughout the country.
Those numbers are staggering. And I say staggering, and I'm almost, it's almost, if it wasn't so sad, it would be comical, right? That this country would declare itself the greatest country in the world. This country right here, the greatest purveyor of violence, as we know, and as we heard, would call itself the greatest country in the world. And they would talk about the atrocities that go on across the planet and conveniently skip over their own zip code and area code. Johanna, you talked about elder abuse. You know what I mean? You've been on in the past, folks like yourself and Pam and others, Dr. Ricardo Alvarez, et cetera. And we've talked about how this is another form of execution. Why would you call it elder abuse? And would you call this medical apartheid as well?
Oh, it's medical apartheid, it's elder abuse, it's barbarism. It reflects the degraded, lost character of American society. One of the things that we witnessed, those of us who've been in the movement for some time, when Mumia got off death row, we would visit him on death row. But when he got off death row, we started visiting him in general population. When you go to visit prisoners, what you see is prisoners coming in wheelchairs with canes. You get to see that, wow, the prison is an old people's home for Black and brown people, right? A prison population that was captured in the 80s and 90s, targeted, right? Because as we see, the criminals in the ruling class are running rampant. They're everywhere to be found, but prison.
Right.
But the people who are engaged in petty activity, they're locked up for life and then stripped of the right to medical care, abused daily. I want to quote from Mumia's Life from Death Row, and I put it on the chat. This is what he says about prison. Prison is a second-by-second assault on the soul, a day-to-day degradation of the self, an oppressive steel and brick umbrella that transforms seconds into hours and hours into days. Now, consider that that's what's happening to you in your latter years, in the latter years of your life, when your body is just by nature challenged physically because of age. It really shocks the conscience that this is what happens day in and day out behind the wall. And most Americans are not privy to this horror show, which is being funded with our tax dollars, right? Marijuana is being sold across the country right now. Across the country, people are making money, big, money, selling marijuana legally. And there are people, our people behind the wall who are in prison for petty drug deals. I mean, and again, they're being sickened by the system. So hepatitis C, 700,000 people suffer from hepatitis C in the prisons. And in fact, we sued the Pennsylvania DOC and won because it refused to give Mumia the hepatitis C treatment he needed to save his life. And as a result of this precedent-setting case, prisoners across the country can now begin the process of getting access to the medication, which is life-saving, cures hepatitis C, but costs $90,000. So they were keeping it from Mumia and our people. Mumia had a skin condition, continues to have a skin condition, but the water in the prison is regularly black, literally. Not, not foggy, but he reports and other prisoners report that it comes out black from the faucet. The food that prisoners get, we don't give to dogs and pets and cats. So, we can go on and on and on. And again, we're subjecting an aging population to this kind of abuse. It's unfathomable. In any other context, in any other society, were it not for the color of the people in these prisons, this wouldn't be tolerated.
And one thing to that point that we should look at, just also from a legal perspective, right here in Pennsylvania, and I want folks to really look into this for themselves. Pennsylvania just got, and this is fascinating because it's so recent, just in 2017. So 2015, the PA inmates were looking at what's called the one good eye policy. People can look at that for themselves. And really what it meant was that if a prisoner had, quote unquote, one good eye, right? One good eye, that they would be denied surgical treatment. And so what was happening is that people were, continuing to have severe conditions, severe cataracts, and thereby condemning them basically to partial or in some cases total blindness. That doesn't get overturned until 2017, just 8 short years ago. And I think that's important to raise because it was the inmates who brought this up, the prisoners who brought this up. But what it also talks about is this question of the idea of even having that policy in the first place is damning, is terrible, is despicable, it just shows it's detestable. It's all the words, because really what you're saying is that you're relegating a space that we already know is dangerous for multiple reasons. Now we have prisoners and folks who are in the inside behind the walls who have to now deal with, not only are they older, but now they have vision issues in an already sort of hostile environment. And now you have to navigate, not bumping into things and not being able to see things, and people in front of you looking like shapes, or as Johanna mentioned earlier, being dark. That one good eye policy was not only one of the more horrific ideas recently when it comes to this subject, but it brings in why we have to also continue to figure out ways to consolidate our grassroots campaigns with our radical legal campaigns, because that's a fight that had to be won in order to figure out ways so that a prisoner like a Mumia Abu-Jamal and others could get the surgical care that they not only need, but that they demand.
I'm sitting here, and the most difficult thing about being on this side of the microphone, right, being on the quote unquote media side, is being an organizer. And although you hear these horror stories, and we've heard these horror stories myself for the last 40 years, and I'm sure you all probably just as long, right? Or close to it. It's never a moment when it's not appalling. It's never a moment when it's not shocking. We've heard all the torture stories. You know what I'm saying? We talk about elder abuse. We know that Rochelle McGee served 67 years in prison, only 16 and a half of his life on the streets, right? I think he was 84 when he transitioned. Think of that. Think about that. We know that Veranza Bowers did 51 years in prison, held 20 years over his time, and we couldn't do anything about it. We know that Jalil served 50 years. We know that our brother Leonard Peltier, who was just released in February 18th, at age 80, going on 81 years old in a couple weeks, served 49 years in prison. Johanna mentioned, and I'm paraphrasing, that prison is becoming, to a great extent, a nursing home for revolutionaries. We don't get to retire. You know what I'm saying? It's like you retire in the jail cell with all kinds of illnesses and ailments, so on and so forth. You get out. Oftentimes, in Leonard's case, you're on a lifetime parole. That's right. Excuse me, a lifetime home arrest, or you're released and on a compassionate release where there's really no compassion. They just don't want to bury you. You understand what I'm saying? They don't want that responsibility. So they release you for a couple months, weeks, days, whatever the case is. Johanna mentioned the black water coming up out of the faucet. And I'm wondering, is it because of the fact that Mumia is literally in a coal mine? The prison where Mumia is literally a coal mine. It's a coal mine town, a coal town. So no wonder the water's black. You understand? I'm asking, I want to know, Johanna, as a attorney, a professor, an author, what must be done? I mean, I know it's almost a rhetorical question, but here we are, it's 2025. Gabe mentioned rolling with the Mumia campaign probably somewhere between 99 and 2000.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And in the words of Digital Underground, it's all around the world, same song. Where are we today? Because the movement looks like it's strange these days, and I could be wrong. And forgive me, I'm not trying to disrespect any elders or youth or whoever. The movement is real weird these days. What's your take? Because Mumia is languishing, going blind. Jamil Alameen, Imam Jamil, was given 9 months about 4 or 5 months ago to live. What are we looking at here?
So I think it's important for us to take a step back and for the people who are listening to see this as part of the larger crisis we're in today, the neo-fascist crisis. So for the last 40 years, U.S. public policy, year after year, election after election, has identified crime and immigration as the major problem in American society. And on that basis, we built the largest prison system in the world. The carceral state is the third largest employer in the nation. The carceral system in the land of the free, putting people away and torturing them, is the third largest employer in the nation. Now, who are the guards and who are the bureaucrats? These are people who are sick, right? They are, if you had to diagnose the prison system as a psychologist, you would call it a serial killer or a malignant narcissist, right? People, that's what you would call the prison system from what you see, how people are treated, the control, the terror. It's not abuse, it's terror inflicted daily on people. From above, you strip people of their power, of their voice, you deny them medical care. That ish is gonna have an impact on American society. And you can't divorce that reality within the prison system from what we see today, right? That's what explains, in part, the neo-fascist turn that our government has taken, which didn't begin with Trump. It actually began with the policies of Democrats, right? Who invested millions in these systems. So, people might think that this is, a discrete, idiosyncratic movement in America, but it's in fact the movement or the issue that drives and infects how we interact with each other as human beings in the society. It's the face of democracy. It's disfigured. It's so I think we need to draw these connections in order to wake people up. Like, this is the logical conclusion of the carceral state is fascism.
Yeah.
Right? Unchecked.
Yeah.
So that realization or connecting those dots is part of what needs to happen, because the ish is going to come knocking at your door in some way, shape, or form. It has already.
And I would just add to that as well, Brother Kalonji and Sister Johanna, that even if we look at, I think from an analysis of the past few years, as we've looked at, what's going on with the assault on Gaza, one thing that's emerged, right, through the encampments, through the, increased, protesting and sort of info sharing, digital organizing around Sudan and Congo, is there's still insertion of folks who are the most marginalized, including political prisoners. And so when you hear Mumia Abu-Jamal speak at a Gaza encampment, that allows an opportunity to further shape and further build the minds of those who had never perhaps heard his commentary before. And now you're hearing him speak live at these spaces. And you're able to sort of, through a lens of intersectionality, build on these different ideas and see how they connect together. Even more recently, as we identified the fact that so many journalists have been killed throughout this whole last few years. And we can see what's going on now, as we're seeing even as recently as last week here in Philadelphia, at a recent action, there also was raised a question of Mumia Abu-Jamal as a radical journalist, who they also want to kill, who they also want to take his life, in a similar spirit of this assault on the truth tellers. And it's this assault on the truth tellers, and it's this attack on journalists, and this attack on radical journalists that must be further unpacked from our movement, because that's really also what's happening. We know that they're coming after you, Brother Kalonji. They've been doing that for decades, right? They don't want Black Power media to exist because of the truth that's told on this show, on this station, on this channel, day in and day out. That's also a particular question that we're going to have to figure out in order and be able to sort of work through, because this assault is damaging not only our ability to sort of get the word out, but also to sustain the momentum that's required to see victory. And that's really what they want. They know that they perhaps cannot outright kill the messenger, but they are working like hell to kill the message. And that is something that we have to figure out also and work through the lens of Mumia Abu-Jamal, through the lens of radical journalism, and through the lens of all these issues around health and how it all comes together.
Gabe, I'm so glad you said that, because I think that, again, part of, I would say, our frustration is the lack of seriousness when it comes to our liberation movement. And I think that once we, both the quote unquote organizers, activists, freedom fighters, journalists, etc., once we get inside our spirit, our mind, and our soul, that it's not about the individual, and that is a collective assault, and that it's just like we talk about slavery, as Imam Jamil pointed out, it's not over, it just changed form. There's no new Jim Crow. It's the same shit, a different toilet. There's no new modern slavery. It is a continuation of what it's always been. So once some of our activists, freedom fighters, get off star mode and remember that we're in the battlefield, perhaps we won't get shot.
Yeah.
But as long as we parading like we stand up like we Lincoln, you're gonna definitely get popped upside your dome piece. You understand? And that's just the reality of where we are. You all have talked to Mumia lately. What's his spirits like? I mean, I know that, you know, again, every time I talk to him, he's the same Mumia. How is he doing right now? And either one of you can answer to both. How's he despite the circumstance? Let me just say that. How's his spirit?
His spirit is always like the sun, brilliant. But this is a hit because Mumia has been in prison for over 40 years, 44 years now, 45 years, and he's been able to survive through his daily practice, daily journalistic practice. He reads, he writes, and he's not been able to read and write for 7 months, right? I mean, this is now like eating, like breathing for him, right? It's what keeps him alive. It's what keeps his spirit soaring. He's in a PhD program, and he's had to stop the work. Prisoners read his emails. Interestingly, he was telling me this a number of months ago, and I thought, oh my God, what an amazing experience for the prisoner. And he was like, or for your guy, probably younger. And he's like, for them, for me, what are you talking about? Like, it's me who needs the help. But of course I'm thinking, this is an incredible mentorship opportunity. But he was like, nah, I can't see. I need this. And it's not easy. It's not easy to ask for help, right? To show your vulnerability, right? Especially in a prison setting where hypermasculinity is the order of the day, and you can't let them see you sweat, right? For real safety concerns. So, and knowing that the prison is slow walking him to blindness must be devastating. So, I mean, he's strong, but I know that there's a lot going on inside of Mumia that he's not, that he's keeping close to his chest.
And I'm glad you pointed it out, because the blindness itself, for some, we just say he can't see, right? But the blindness for Mumia is what it is to Leonard. Leonard can't paint. Yeah. That's what kept him alive. You know what I'm saying? This is what makes you who you are. You understand what I'm saying? It's like, a rapper not being able to talk, a singer not being able to talk, Stevie Wonder not being able to sing. His eyes his voice has become his eyes. You understand what I'm saying? Mumia's voice has inspired the fact that the three of us are on this platform right now on a Tuesday at noon. You know what I'm saying? Advocating for a brother who we've gotten to know, who's inspired us all, including folks who are in the chat and folks that see and hear this at another date, and who is a selfless human being. And not only did you torture him by putting him on death row, again, Mumia lost his wife, his daughter, and other family members as he's been languishing in these gulags. He was taken off death row, and they just put him back on death row through all types of different medical attempts at assassinating him by whatever means possible. You mentioned him having a diabetic coma without diabetes. How is that possible?
Right.
The sodium in the food, the salt, everything. It's just, I mean, it's insane. You can't have a healthy lifestyle in an unhealthy environment. You know? And now you're saying that his passion, writing, he can't even do that because he can't see, he can't read, whatever, so on and so forth. What are some calls to action? Because I know that there's been some calls to action. What can the people do? Because folks always want to know what they can do, you know, and I know that our audience, you know, they're about the work. You know, those other audiences, I don't know what they do, but over here at Black Power Media, we about the business. So what can we do? What's the marching orders?
Well, one thing I would say, first and foremost, is when it comes to Mumia's eyesight, I would also say, because this is a village, and this is me speaking first before I get to the campaign, I would say check in on your elders in your own family who may have vision issues. Because sometimes we go to the political before we go to the personal. And there might be grandma, there might be pop dealing with the same thing. And what we don't want is people to be putting all their energy into one person or a few people when they got people languishing and challenging in your own household. So I would say it's a both and conversation first and foremost. But as far as numbers, we definitely are saying right now, please, if you go to my page on Instagram, Good Brother Gabe, or our main page, which is Bring Mumia Home, you'll find the flyer, which talks about the calls that folks can make right now. And all the numbers are there. So if you go to Instagram, go to the page, Bring Mumia Home. You can also go to my page, Good Brother Gabe, and many other pages as well, the folks on this page as well, Johanna. You'll see all the numbers to call. It'll be all the to the prison. And one of the things that Johanna even outlined yesterday is that, you know, part of this targeted sort of approach is going to be, or has to be rather, with the prison, with the Department of Corrections, with the governor's office, right? All these things have to be part of our strategy, because the reality of it is, as people will see on the numbers, we have to be able to put the pressure on, as we've unfortunately but fervently have had to do, you know, for decades. You know, we have to collectively put the pressure on. Doesn't matter where you're calling from, please make those calls. So you'll see those calls to SCI Mahanoy, which is where Mumia Abu-Jamal is. You'll also see the numbers to call the Department of Corrections. Again, we want to make sure that people are accessing these numbers and emailing these email addresses to make sure that they're getting flooded with the people. And also part of the demand is what we've always said, which is release Mumia now, because it's apparent that the prison does not know what to do. They have no strategy, they have no process, and they have no infrastructure at place to even keep him alive, right? And so if that's the case, if this is now the 5th or 6th or 7th health malady that he's had to deal with at the age of 71, going on 44 years of imprisonment, the reality of it is that, you know what, y'all are no good. And so this institution that has held this man down behind the walls for so long is no good. It has to be dealt with. And we got to actually release this brother now, because you all are actually unfit to even, quote unquote, have him in your so-called institution of imprisonment as the abolitionists that we are. And so that's going to be one of the things, but also, of course, one of our main demands is to have his surgery scheduled ASAP, right? We know this from folks who have vision impairment issues, vision impairment challenges. We know from speaking with Dr. Ricardo Alvarez and other members of the team that with each day, these organs of ours, if they're being attacked, right, by all these issues, multiple issues at play, they're not going to increase by the day. We know that they're going to decrease. They're going to worsen by the day. And each day is making things ever more urgent, right? Each day is making things ever more urgent. Each day is making his vision ever more cloudy, right? And so being able to demand ASAP, these surgical procedures is going to be important as far as the demands are concerned. Feel free to jump in, Johanna.
Yeah, we're going to have a press conference on Friday, so folks should be looking out for that. You can go to @BringMumia on Instagram to get the info. But we need a strategy here that's going to link this campaign to get him the treatment he needs around his eye care to be the building block of the campaign to free him, right? We need to target the prison, the DOC, Larry Krasner's office, the DA of Philadelphia, the governor. These are the people who can free him, especially the governor, and even the prosecutor's office. Mumia was at these protests, the uprisings in defense of Palestine and Gaza a year ago, 2 years ago. His voice was present. We need to connect Mumia's freedom to the freedom of the people of Palestine. Palestinians are the most imprisoned people in the world. 1 in 5, 1 in 4 Palestinians have seen prison. That's what happens when people are oppressed and they resist. They get criminalized, imprisoned, shut down, controlled by the state. In many ways, the history of Palestine and the history of Black Americans in this country mirror each other. We need to make those connections, and we need to show films about Mumia on college campuses. Thousands of people heard Mumia's voice across the nation as a result of those recordings he made in solidarity with Palestine at the height of the student movements. This is a moment for us to stand together. And so we're asking folks in their churches, in their schools, in their unions to show a film and talk about this and call that night, because actually calling makes a huge difference. Whenever we've launched a health campaign with calls to the prison, we've won. There hasn't been a moment when we haven't won. And that's partly because the prisons don't want too much noise around their dark, terror-like daily practices. They want to shut this down, right? So it works, and people should make those calls. And I have some of those numbers if you want me
Please.
to give them out right now. So you should call the prison. The superintendent at SCI Mahanoy is Bernadette Mason. Her number is 570-773-2158. You should also call the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections. The secretary of the PADOC is Laurel Hardy. Her number is 717-728-2573. 717-728-2573. Again, be on the lookout for information about about the press conference where we'll have more concrete actions that you can take beyond this moment.
And just real quick, if I could, I know that we're getting ready to end. Back to your question, Brother Kalonji, about how he's feeling. I think one of the things too, Mumia's humility, that is really extraordinary. Frankly, I feel like that sort of personal, emotional expression of how one navigates their stresses, anxieties, and challenges in life. I think it carries over to other revolutionaries as well. I have some OGs and elders of mine who personally knew the great master teacher, Dr. John Henry Clark. And we know that Dr. John Henry Clark as well lost his vision towards the end of his life. And one of the things they've always told me and that we've always understood is that even though he continued to lecture mightily, even though he kept his strength, even though he continued to write, even though he continued to, really be the force for our lives that he was and still is today, there was still a difference behind the scenes, and those who knew him knew the challenges that he still had to sort of endure by way of losing his vision and really having that blindness affect him. And again, sometimes we just see the roses and the roller coasters, right? We see the highlight reel, but don't know what's going on behind the scenes, family. And I think it's important why this case is so critical, to Kalonji's point, is that it's vital that we sort of go beneath the surface of what's happening. Because just because somebody can continue to, in the case of Mumia Abu-Jamal, do a commentary, which we still love on prisonradio.org, the reality is that behind the scenes, there is suffering happening. And so I really want everybody to understand how this matters, utilizing John Henry Clark as one example of many that we know also are not, if they're not having vision issues, they're having other kinds of health complications, and how we can all support the village by doing what we can and everything that we can to contribute towards a change when it comes to these, just wickedness, in my opinion, devilish, laws and policies and statutes. Let's do what we can, family, to make a change and make a difference and make it happen.
No doubt. Definitely, shout out, long live Dr. John Henry Clark, was a student of his as well. I want a couple of different things. I want to point out that on Wednesdays, and I believe tomorrow at 1 p.m., our good brother Frank, he has a show, U.S. Political Prisoners in You. It airs every Wednesday at 1 p.m. EST, right here on Black Power Media. It's a powerful show. Shout out to Frank for being consistent, dealing with that political prisoner work. I also want to mention that we have a new program coming on Black Power Media called Law for the People. And that's going to take place on October 30th, which is World Political Prisoner Day. It's a monthly broadcast on legal, political, and cultural issues from a Black liberation perspective, featuring lawyers, advocates, activists, thought leaders, and culture bearers. We recognize and realize that, oftentimes behind the scene, the attorneys and the freedom fighters work together, but now we're going to bring them to the stage where once a month you will get, attorneys and, different movement workers, perspective, highlight, and action items, so you can check that out beginning October 30th. I also, while I'm on the air, I want to invite Mumia's coalition, campaign, etc. And I'm giving this charge to Johanna and Gabe right here on right here live. I'm saying to you that I hear you, and I trust the work that you all have been doing. And so, as Black Power Media, we want to offer you our Free 'em All Fridays. Any updates, 15 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, whatever the case is, so that we can make sure we continue to rally the troops, not only around Mumia, but other political prisoners as well. So, handpick, if you all can't make it or whatever the case is, just know that there's an open invite from Black Power Media every Friday until Mumia gets his sight, till he gets his freedom, or whatever the case is. The mic is here. Yes, all you'll have to do is show up. So, hopefully we can make that happen, because I'm like, I feel like, you know, we go to, I'm just gonna say it, we pick and choose who our liberators should be. That's the most asinine, ridiculous thought I could imagine. I'm sure Mumia is not in the cage thinking, well, I don't want this person to free me. I want that person to liberate me. I don't want, you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
Folks then pass by Harriet Tubman and say, okay, well, you know, I want to see if Malcolm's going to come down the line. You understand what I'm saying? Because I don't want a woman to free me. You understand what I'm saying? I don't want, you know, Asada didn't say, I don't want Sekou to liberate me. You understand what I'm saying? We said by any means, right? So at this stage, we need more political prisoner campaigns. Our organization, FTP Movement, we are dedicating the rest of our movement life to going as hard as possible for all political prisoners.
Yes, sir.
All political prisoners, all prisoners of war. We don't care who you down with. We don't care what coalition. Either we work together, we don't. I don't care. You can't stop us. We're going to work to liberate our people, because right now it's so much bullshit. And in the immortal words of Pop, real shit will get you killed, but bullshit will get you killed for sure. So we need to hop up off that and do what we need to do. I appreciate you all for coming on and joining us today on Black Power Media. Definitely raising the name of Imam Jamel Alameen.
Yes, sir.
Definitely raising the name of Kamal Siddiqui, Joy Powell, you know what I'm saying? Mumia, Leonard Peltier, who is not free. He is in general population on house arrest. You know what I'm saying? We still got to get him off that paper. You know what I mean? And so many others, you know, names that I may have not mentioned, but we are fighting for the liberation of all our political prisoners. And if we're not fighting for political prisoners, we're not fighting for shit. That's just the reality of it. So we say the call is free them all.
Free them all.
Again, thank you all for joining us. Yes, and we'll see you all in the whirlwind. You're checking out Black Power Media. Stay tuned. We have Daruba Ben Wahad up next. You don't even have to go nowhere. You could take a quick break. We're going to talk about building a united front against fascism, because that's what needs to happen. But we talking about something that's real and active. We ain't talking about, you know, no practice. Anyway, we see you in a minute. Black Power Media, Reloaded. Peace.
We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips that I am a revolutionary. And you're going to have to keep on saying that. You're going to have to say that I am a proletarian. I am the people.
I need that Fred Douglass bro. Motherfuckers with the muscles. No strength is in the digits. Quit spitting on the bungalow. The devil got a buzz stronger than a bumble nose. Lions and impalas and they creeping through the jungle slow. Warthog, pull him over, but the tail light, heart beating fast, and he begging to the jail Christ. You know the one that brothers find in the slammer. Gotta do the running man if they ever find a hammer. Check the grammar. Kelsey ain't Frazier, sitting on the couch with his wrist near a razor. The hood could be good if we love thy neighbor, but the world is so cold, no gas in the pacer. Indiana in the temple of doom. No, the slum ain't plum, it resembles a broom. Crime on the regular, look at the goons, is what they do from the treetop, silver for the spoon. No regrets, bro, we do it for the don't flex, bro, we do it for the no rest, bro, we do it for the no need to guess, bro, we do it for the no regrets, bro, we do it for the don't flex, bro, we do it for the no rest, bro, we do it for the no need to guess, bro, we do it for the
Formerly my Malcolm Little, but grow up into my Malcolm Unknown. AP like Malcolm Middle, but figure how sun grown is more corner stores, corner pockets and blunt rolls. Get the rolling strips and you know the grip like run nose. Live from where they designated for us to be at, with designated drivers to stay behind on the G-Pack. Toss money with lost money, inspire feedback, and the light come with it, baby. You see that? See that? Be that like nobody ever was. They told us to get it forever on these forever runs. Said to never be done. The height of ambition is what you leak from, and suck all that away when you get it. Know who to keep from. I'm riding in Tommy Smith, John Carlos, but my jeans are still fit from John Favardos, and I still do mean biz as far as bars go, and my roof is still nowhere near where my car go, for real.
No regrets, bro, we do it for the don't flex, bro, we do it for the no rest, bro, we do it for the no need to guess, bro, we do it for the no regrets, bro, we do it for the don't flex, bro, we do it for the no rest, bro, we do it for the no need to guess, bro, we do it for the
I'm not the pig, you got to make a distinction. The people are going to have to stand up against the pig. That's what the pastors are doing, that's what the pastors do it all over the world.
What's happening, good people? We are back. That was Johanna Fernandez and our good brother Gabe. Daruba Ben Wahad is in the building. Daruba, where you at? Turn your camera on so we can do what we need to do. We're gonna be talking about building a united front. Daruba, what's happening, brother? How you feeling?
I'm okay, black man. How you doing?
Man, I'm alive on arrival, man. We still here. We still banging. I don't know if you caught any of the last convo. We just had Johanna and Gabe on talking about Mumia, who they say, is the doctors are warning that he has a imminent permanent blindness on the rise. So, as we know, so many of our comrades, brothers, sisters, OGs, elders, veterans, have transitioned. Many of them, like yourself, experiencing different types of illnesses. So we're continuing to fight and to move forward. How you feeling today, brother? See you over in the land of the living.
Yeah, well, like they say, brother, hurry sundown, see what tomorrow brings. Today we it's when you hear about, what Mumia is going through, has been through, he's been through a whole series of campaigns and struggles to kill him, to assassinate him, to eliminate his voice, to quell the enthusiasm of a younger generation for his freedom. They've done all these things to him. They've done it legally. They've done it in terms of trying to still his voice, trying to murder him, assassinate him under state law. And now, their campaign to break him in terms of health, this ain't the first health issues that Mumia had. Mumia had went through acute myeloma, I believe, skin disease, and he wasn't getting proper treatment, and that led to further complications. And now, this close custody, this close imprisonment, entombment, has led to the deterioration of his faculties, of his ability to see, of his ability to even breathe. I mean, long-term incarceration, when you in max lockdown 23 hours a day, has an impact on your health, as well as your mental and physical health. And so Mumia, like Imam Jamil, who we know has been diagnosed with a finite number of months to live. We know what he's went through. He spent decades in max imprisonment, and until his sight deteriorated, his health is deteriorated. We recall what happened to Matulu Shakur, how he was released just to die a few weeks later. We can go back into many of our political prisoners who've come out and passed away to the ancestors because of their their long-term maltreatment and entombment in the prison system. So I'm glad. I'm pleased to hear that you know that that your organization, FDLA, will focus and dedicate itself to bringing attention to our political prisoners and getting them out, getting justice for them, bringing the issue of political imprisonment is closely tied, bringing that issue, tying it very closely to the struggle that we have now against the rise of fascism and the institutionalization, the further ratification of the white supremacist ethno-Christian state. We see that all of these things are connected, you know, and if we study our radical history, we'll see that many of the features that we're looking at now, the rise of homeland security, ethno-Christian cleansing of the population, was going on at the height of the civil rights movement. And I think that one of the lessons we need to learn is that despite our love for our activists in the civil rights movement, whether it was Dr. King and others, or Medgar Evers, they were delusionary. They were delusionary because they believed that the United States white supremacist construct could be reformed, that these people had a conscience, that they had a spirit, that they had a soul, that you could shame them, and that they would change. And the image of dogs being sicked on black people just trying to get the right to vote supposedly shame them into passing the voters legislation act and desegregating schools. Not all these victories were symbolic. They were not concrete. They were not institutional. This is a white supremacist capitalist settler state, and it has no shame. It has no morals. You cannot negotiate it with it. The only power that we have is to organize ourselves into a political force so that we could make the exploitation and our oppression very expensive for the system, that the system has to spend more money than it's earning in order to keep us from power and from influence. That's our strength. Our strength is the power to disrupt.
Right on, right on. Again, we we're gonna get into the necessity of a united front against fascism, but I also want to remind folks, because there are people that may not be familiar with you as a veteran Panther, veteran BLA leader, and a former political prisoner yourself who served 19 years, I believe, in the last stint. For folks who are unaware, we've talked 1,000 times, but I think that, for the sake of folks like Mumia, for the sake of folks like Kamal Siddiqui, Joy Powell, and so many others, Imam Jamil, being a political prisoner, because I think that folks look at it as abstract. They look at it as just, we shout free them all, we go to some rallies, put together some events, folks go around, shake their tail feather and everything, and after that's over, it's over. Meanwhile, the political prisoner is still languishing. Meanwhile, the political prisoner still has to go to trial if he can get outside of his cell or her cell. I want to ask you, what does it mean to be a political prisoner, not just in words, but from your experience? Because the words, we can all come up with a fly definition. You understand what I'm saying? But what does that mean in real time? Because we know folks like Sekou, who is now an ancestor, many would say that even his transition is a result of suffering behind the wall, even though it might have, he lasted longer, quote unquote, than a lot of comrades who may have gotten out and made a transition after a few days. Can you speak to what does it mean to being a political prisoner in the United States of America?
Well, I think that when we use the term political prisoner for those of our comrades and brothers and sisters who fought in the last the last few decades for our liberation, we use that term to really define conscious activists who were captured, who were framed, who were put in prison as a consequence of their radical politics and activism and revolutionary politics and activism. However, we need to not lose sight of the fact that African people's presence in this hemisphere is a consequence of an act of war under the guise of mercantile capitalism, capitalist trade. In other words, the transatlantic slave trade. The transatlantic slave trade was waged by Europeans against Africa, and not only not really the whole of Africa. It's a concentrated part of West Africa and West Central Africa. So the majority of us, the whole of we come from there. Wherever the transatlantic slave ship dropped us off, whether in Jamaica, whether in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, whether in Brazil, wherever the European Christian settlers, colonizers set up their plantation system and their economic system, their mercantile system that was based on shipment of cotton and processing of rum and cane sugar that enslaved us. It was an act of war. It was an act of war, and war is the continuation of politics by violent means, and politics is the continuation of war by nonviolent means. And so all of the things that we have went through since we've been here, whether it was the post-Civil War Reconstruction and the betrayal of that, whether it was the neo-colonial feudal system of chattel of sharecropping, and whether it was the period of segregation and Jim Crow. These were all soft versions, political violence inflicted on African people. This was a war. This was a continuation of a war, and so we need to really understand that this continuation of this war is going on right now. What we're seeing today, with the emphasis on immigration of people from what used to be the territory of the United States, which we call the Southwest now, at the Mexican border, we see that all of these things are reenactment, a rebooting of the original settler colonial mentality that founded America. And we have become an internal colony inside of this country because the symbolic victories that were granted to us in terms of desegregation of schools, Voting Rights Act, all of these things were symbolic. And as symbolisms of capitalist white supremacy construct, they were removable at any time. It depended on the circumstances of the empire and the ruling elite and the property class. And we see that those rights are being stripped from us today. They're rewriting the history of slavery. They're telling us slavery was some type of mutually beneficial institution. They have cartoons up with bogus Frederick Douglasses talking about slavery was an institution that, although it may have been kind of reprehensible, was necessary, and all of this stuff, you see. So we need to understand what that means. What that means is that when they come for the migrants, the Mexicans and the Chicanos and the Haitians, with anonymous crackers, with masks on, driving white SUVs and snatching people off the streets and at Target, and Home Depot. We need to understand that we've always been on that hit list. Back when I was growing up, it used to be called the Yellow Peril. When China first started to emerge as a power, and after the revolution in 1949, the U.S. started calling the Chinese the Yellow Peril. They started calling yellow people, like they were a disease, like they were something that white folks had to be inoculated against. And we see that today in terms of how the U.S. is talking about the rise of China, the threats of China. The United States has over 800 military bases around the world. The Chinese don't have not one. Okay, so we need to understand who's the real villain here, who's the warmonger here. It's the white supremacist, ethnocentric, jingoistic European settler state. That's America. That's why they have the affinity that they have with the Zionist European settler state of Israel. That's why they're married at the hip. That's why white supremacist Zionism controls the debate and the dialogue around the politics of Western Asia. This is why our enemies are defined by the enemies of white supremacy. So we have black people coming out talking about, well, the occupation of National Guardsmen in Washington, D.C. may be a good thing because it cuts down on violence. No, Negro will be a good thing if we cut down on your ass. That'll cut down on violence. So, we don't have an understanding of our role and our position in this white supremacist construct. When we got civil rights, so-called civil rights and the right to vote, they pushed back with mass incarceration. They pushed back with the war on crime. They pushed back with the war on drugs that criminalized our entire communities. When they came after the Black Panther Party in 1967 with the first SWAT team, nobody knew what SWAT meant. Now everybody knows SWAT teams come on evictions now. They'll come with a SWAT team to evict you from an apartment. They'll come with a SWAT team to check on domestic violence. So we know what SWAT teams and the militarization of police mean, which segues into what we are also talking about, how the U.S. military industrial complex and the modern police state is a democratic fascist state. It's a state in which both political parties are controlled by wealth, by the corporate elite, by people with money, by the wealthy, and that the people, the working people who surplus labor that they call profits, go to enrich these people, not for universal health care, not for taking care of our children, not for looking out for those who can't look out for themselves, but no, to enrich the pockets of these crackers, these poop butt crackers like the Orange Man and his mob. So we need to really understand that the only way we could combat this, because revolution in America is not coming no time soon. Okay, that the only way we could really combat this as a people that constitutes a population of over 22 million, that's a lot of people. The only way we can combat this is to make our exploitation, our marginalization more costly than it is to leave us alone. It doesn't matter what these crackers think about us. It's what they do when they act on what they think about us that matters. So we need to stop mourning about how Black Wall Street, and when it came to power, it wiped it out. The lesson that we should learn is that we should control the police and the public safety instruments of our community. So if these crackers try to come and try that shit again, we'll wipe them out. But now we ain't doing that. What we're doing is we're welcoming in the National Guard. We're regularizing the occupation of police, of the military in our community, like they're occupying a foreign territory. And we have Negroes in political office who are welcoming that, and we have some progressive politicians in political office who abhor this and who oppose this and who are trying to struggle against it. So we need to let them know that at the grassroots level, we got their back. And those other individuals that are welcoming in democratic fascism, and it's on what you call it, payroll, the payroll of AIPAC and the ADL. We need to really understand that these people don't represent us. And we need to sack them. We need to get them out of office. We need to run them out the community. And this is why they don't know what to say. This is why you see the Black Caucus, so-called Black Caucus, is practically mute on the issue of genocide in Western Asia, on the U.S. unilaterally going to war against Iran, supporting the genocide in Lebanon committed by the IDF. They're silent And we have Negroes on the podcast talking about what Iran got to do with us. You know, what the Middle East got to do with us. We ain't got nothing to do with us. We got Negroes from ADOS talking about, well, you know, the ancestors, our people in Africa, you know, some of them sold us into the European slave trade. So you know, we ain't talking about them when we talk about reparations. Then you got other Negroes talking that's over here from Africa talking about, well, we know we African migrants that came over, and you know, we're not down with militant black folks. We just trying to get over, like, you know. So we have these contradictions. These contradictions are all led by ignorance and ignorant people. So when we call for a united front, we're not calling for a united front of ignorant people. We're calling for a united front of those who understand that capitalism and white supremacy are mutually beneficial to each other. They're a symbiotic relationship. When we talk about universal health care, when we talk about a decent housing, we're talking about principles of socialism. We're talking about principles of community, of community interaction, and putting the word neighbor back in hood. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. Systems that are beneficial to the people who have to live under those systems. And this is why the campaign of a Maldani in New York rocks and threatens the very foundation of the duopoly political system of the Democratic and Republican corporate parties. And they're talking about everything from deporting the man to killing him. You see, we have rappers coming out like 50 Cent talking about he'll give him $250,000 for him to move out of New York. I mean, listen to this ignorance, man. And he won't give $250,000 to a Black liberation movement, though.
Give $2.50 to the Black liberation movement.
But he'll give 200. So, but I'm just saying we need to check ourselves before we be by ourselves. You know, and that's what the United Front is about. It's about the leadership of the African American diaspora who's in a state of war. It's in the leadership of that community in a coalition and a united front against white supremacy and fascism and ethno-Christian nationalism. And of course we got to be in the leadership role because they established this system on our backs. They established this system on our labor. So we need to be in the forefront of dismantling it.
So you mentioned, of course, the United Front, but you also mentioned, you know, what it entails, right? You talked about how it's not a united front of for ignorant people, right? For folks who are listening, what would a united front against fascism look like? You know what I'm saying? I mean, because of the fact that it can sound vague, and you just named a couple groups, and you know what I mean. So to give an understanding and clarity.
Well, in order to have an understanding and clarity of the concept of United Front in this particular place and time, we have to have an understanding historically of fascism and capitalism in the Western Hemisphere and its development. But moreover, we have to understand what emerged out of this history from the turn of the 20th century up into the present time in the early 21st century. Fascism emerged at the height of the industrialization of the Western world during the collapse of some of its foremost colonial empires. You know, World War I was the first industrial war in which millions and millions of mainly of Europeans and their colonized people died in this first industrial war. And it set the stage for the rise of fascism. It set the stage also for the rise of socialism and communism. And fascism arose as a direct response of the white supremacists and ruling elites, especially the royal classes, against the idea and the notion of socialism, of communism that emerged after World War I. And I'm just going over this history to show that we're using the word fascism. And we're using the term and the word fascism to basically say that from that period on, after the end of World War II, when the rise, the the notion of the fascism that we really know that stands out in our minds, of course, is the fascism of Nazi Germany and Italy. The word fascism, fascissimo, derived from Mussolini's organization or disorganization of the working class in Italy in the early 1930s, and the rise of Hitler from 1928 on. So we know fascism is that. And what is that? That is the ethno-nationalism of a white of a capitalist state in which the owners of the means of production and finance capital, the rich, are unified with the state and the military organization of the state, the ability of the state to rule the masses of people and wage war. That this merger leads to what we could call a fascist construct, the fascist political entity. So in a lot of ways, to put it simply put, fascism is the merger of capital and state power. And its use as the political and jingoistic policies for the country. That's why they say America's first business is business. That America goes around the world making the world safe for Coca-Cola and United Fruit. That's true. It's not going around the world trying to help people develop better crops and feed themselves and create an equitable trade system. No, it's going around the world to get people to plant cash crops that enrich their economy, that control and access and control their resources. So fascism is an expression of capitalist economic and political control over the state. Okay, and the use of the military and the police to enforce that rule. So fascism, by its nature, is anti-socialist and anti-worker. But in order for it to enlist the enthusiasm of workers, in order to get workers behind it, it has to produce something that working people could benefit from. And if we look at fascism in the past, we see that the rise of militarized Nazism in Germany provided the German people with work and jobs. And in Germany, the rise of Nazi Germany was looked upon by the capitalist world as a miracle of recuperation from the dystopian reality of the stock market and economic collapse in 1920. So fascism in encapsulation is the corporate and political control, the corporate and control of the wealthy of the state. And the state's use of the delusion. Sometimes it's a delusion of democracy, but more and oftentimes it's an authoritarian leadership. Like Hitler took over the Bundestag with the Nazi Party and was later made chancellor by Kaiser Wilhelm or whatever he was, and he became the ultimate ruler of Germany and fascism. Same with Mussolini. And we see that's what Trump is trying to do today, by introducing the National Guard, militarizing the police, engaging in wars abroad under the rubric of that he's the peacemaker, and all of these things. This is the same thing Hitler did when he accessed Sudetenland in the east of Germany, when he invaded Poland, when he invaded Czechoslovakia. He was saying that he was just righting the wrongs that was done to Germany and the German people. And of course, ultimately, he went so far that the Allies, the so-called Allies, the West, had to stand up to him. And we see that history, although it's not repeating itself, it does rhyme. The U.S. empire is in decline. And what's expediting this decline of the U.S. empire is the European settler state of Israel and its genocide. It has alienated the entire world. It has brought to the revelation of people of color around the world that the West and their supporters do not view the rest of the world, the melanin enriched planet, as human beings, worthy of humanity and human treatment. Otherwise, the children in Gaza wouldn't be starving. Otherwise, the authentic Semitic people, the Palestinians, wouldn't be undergoing a genocide by the inauthentic Semitic people. The Europeans are Zionists. So
when you say authentic and inauthentic, because there's going to be some people that saying like, well, what you mean, brother? You mean what you mean authentic and inauthentic? Can you talk about that whole position? Because we've, oftentimes whenever you speak out against Zionist Israel, then automatically you're deemed anti-Semitic. What does that mean in real time?
Well, the Zionism, first of all, is a European settler racist ideology. It's not a religion. The Jewish religion, as we do know, as it originated as Muslims, we know it has nothing to do with Zionism. Zionism was concocted at the turn of the 20th century in late 1800s as a means to settle the anti-Jewish hatred that Europeans had towards Ashkenazi Jews. And this hatred evolved after the fall of Moorish Spain in 1492 and the beginning of Spanish Inquisition, when Sephardic Jews, which were African Jews, Jews of color, were run out of Spain, and non-African Jews had to either convert to some form of Christianity or flee and try to find some type of refuge. This was after the Great Inquisition in the 15th century. So the hatred for Jews in Europe was of such magnitude that pogroms were implemented against Jewish communities. These are Ashkenazi Jews, European Jews, who converted to Judaism in around the 17th century, I think, or early 18th century, and they're from from Western Europe, Eastern Europe. I'm sorry, Western Europe. But these Jews were distinct from the Semitic Jews, the Sephardic Jews, who were mostly Africans of some of Arab or ancestry, who were Semitic people. And the Palestinians, the original Palestinians, that used to be the area that used to be called the Levant, the original Palestine, were Semitic people, going all the way back to the days of the Egyptian Empire. So the original Semites are the Palestinians. The European settlers who came to Palestine as a result of the agreement between the British Empire and the Rothschilds and European Jewry to give them a homeland was a consequence of the fall of the Muslim Turkish Empire. And France and Britain were carving up the Middle East. They created Lebanon, they created modern Syria, they created Jordan, and they wanted to settle Europeans in Palestine. And so they came up with the Balfour Agreement guaranteeing European Jews, European Ashkenazi Jews, a homeland. So they gradually migrated to the land of Palestine, where by 1948, after World War II, they began to wage a guerrilla war, or before that, they began to wage a guerrilla war against the British to get the British out of occupying what is now Palestine, because they wanted to steal the land. So the Zionist ideology is clear from the very initial writings of Theodore Herzl and the other Zionists, that their objective was to take the land of Palestine from the original inhabitants and claim it as their birthright given to them by God. And we see that when I say inauthentic, the European Zionists, they come from places like Ukraine, Western Russia, Poland, Latvia. They come from Europe. The original Semites, they come from North Africa, and they come from the Saudi Peninsula and the Yemen and there. So they're the authentic Semites. So the fact that we could say that when we say we are pro-Palestinians, that we are labeled anti-Semitic is how effective the propaganda of European settler colonialism has been since the end of World War II. and the establishment of the European settler state. And finally, I just want to say that this European settler state of Israel is the last European settler state in the epoch of settler states. Canada was a European settler state. Spain, Mexico at first was a European settler state. Brazil became European settler states. Colombia, all of these. But the United States was a colony of Britain and broke away from Britain and established its own republic. So it began as a colonial settler state. And its first mission was the genocide of the native people and the taking of their land. And once that was completed, they then established their republic and their laws and their constitutions and a system of chattel slavery in order to support the economic or agrarian development. And that's exactly what the Israelis are doing. They're trying to cleanse the land of Palestine, of the Palestinian people, occupy their land and claim it for themselves. That's what these white supremacist dogs are doing. And those who support that, you know, they're mongrels themselves. Well, I ain't gonna call them dogs because dogs have fidelity and faithfulness, and they don't turn on their master. And you got human beings that's less than dogs. They have no fidelity. They have no faithfulness. They have no morals. So I don't want to insult dogs by calling these individuals dogs.
I appreciate you catching yourself and calling them individuals. Checking out Black Power Media. We got the Ruben Ben Wahad on deck. We have about 15 minutes left, but I want to I invited you on because last year we talked about the building of the National United Front Against Fascism. We had a few people come on and endorse, including Claudia de la Cruz. These are folks who ran for ran a presidential campaign last run. Claudia de la Cruz, Jill Stein, and Dr. Jill Stein, Dr. Cornel West. I want to talk about that. Where do we see the United Front right now, and what are your thoughts on the call that we made last year, and how do you see it moving this year?
Well, first of all, I think a lot of the young folks across the country, given what's happening in Western Asia, given the U.S. Rise of police violence and excesses, I think there's a lot of young folks that are ready to join and put aside this sectarian politics and join a united effort to stop this, and to hold our elected officials accountable on the one hand, and at the same time to organize our communities to take over control of their own public safety, to take over the control of those instruments, those healthcare facilities, those instruments, sanitation, all those things that make our communities viable and livable. We need to control these on the ground. So all politics is local right now. And so the United Front is an effort to bring together all of these different activist grassroots efforts under one umbrella that has a certain principles of resistance to our democratic and anti-racist positions. So the United Front is not something that where we just want one organization or one individual, or we're going to elect one person to be the voice. We have to understand that we have no power in disunity. Only in unity do we have any power. Once we could call for a nationwide boycott and cost the economy 15% of its income in 1 day or 2 days, then we have power. Then it becomes necessary for the status quo to negotiate with this United Front, or it might even be a new political party, whatever it might be. But as it stands now, we have no refuge in the institutional corporate parties. There's no representation for us on that front. So we have to build from the ground ground up united fronts, united efforts. We have to talk about how building, having housing coalitions in each city. You understand, or addressing the issues of homelessness. We have to talk about having senior citizens collectives in each city. Just talking about senior citizens transportation and health care and stuff like this. And this all has to come under one coalition, one united front. So we have to begin with, as my brother, the eminent historian said, that a united front idea is good, but we need a manifesto. We have to have some type of manifesto so that organizations can sign on to this in principle. And that's what we need to work on. And that's why I'm going to Minneapolis later on in several days to talk to a coalition of organizations. I know that in New York, there's a lot of grassroots energy from students from Columbia into the campaign of the socialist a Democrat that's running for governor. I think that's a progressive move, although I don't particularly put much faith in electoral politics. I do understand a historical moment when there is one. And this is an excellent opportunity for young people to begin to go door to door, to introduce people to the socialist principles that somebody like Maldani is talking about. He's talking about free transportation for working people. Why not? The subway system and the bus system in New York is the only system working people have. You see? And why is it run down? Why is there such high fares and there's no and the conditions don't improve? And we could look across the pond at China and look at their subway system and how it works. We need to understand that that transportation system no longer services the people. It services the bureaucracy and the political bureaucracy of New York. In the political structure of New York. It's the same way if we look at, that's mass transportation. It's the same way if we look at healthcare in New York and how that's being administered in the different hospitals and how people have access to that. There's a whole bunch of issues when somebody's talking about ordinary working people who can't afford a place, food to eat, being able to get free food. They're being looked at as if they're just trying to give ne'er-do-wells, shiftless individuals a free pass in society while everybody else works. They don't understand socialism, and socialism and the understanding of communal living has been maligned under capitalist individualism and capitalist consumption. Conspicuous consumption. We are all told to go for ourselves and me first. We don't look at our relationship to our neighbor as being a basic and fundamental relationship in our society that has to be maintained and that has to be nurtured. And that the purpose of government is to maintain and nurture that relationship, not to ride roughshod over it, not to have police come in and tell us what to do and when to do it. We need to control all of these aspects in our community. So these bogus Negro mayors and these charlatans that we have that think that the police in the Black community serves our needs, we need to get rid of these individuals. We need to take over. We need to talk to different organizations that are talking about fighting for equal rights in the courts. Why isn't there a civil suit, a class action against the major police unions in the United States? The police unions are not workers. Police are not workers. They're armed agents of the state. Why are they enjoying special privileges and constitutional exemptions when they kill and murder and maim ordinary people? No, we need to decertify these police unions, and they need to find a different way to express their profession and their guild. But right now, the police union exerts more political control over the mayor and the political elite in our cities than the people do. You see, you can't get elected dog catcher unless the police union endorse you. You see, So how is that possible? And it's the same way if we look at other things, whether we look at sanitation, how sanitation is treated in the Black community and the poor communities as opposed to the suburbs and the richer communities. We need to understand that all of these mechanisms of local politics and economic and political control, we can utilize the electoral system to its limitation, but we can take control of these things. And that brings us to the cop cities. The cop cities, over 110 cop cities, I believe, are sprouting up all over the world, and they're all contiguous to Black communities. They're all contiguous to concentrations of people of color. Why? Because we are distributed in the United States as a domestic colony. Every Black enclave, whether it's in Mississippi or in Chicago, is a domestic colony. It fits the profile of a colony. There are no jobs in the community. The community has food deserts. You can't shop in those communities. The communities are occupied by police that don't live there. All of these things indicate that we're basically held in a domestic colonial status. Okay, so we need to organize ourselves accordingly. And that's why the leadership of a united front has to come from these concentrated urban areas where Black people and people of color and poor people constitute the majority.
No doubt. You're listening to Daruba Ben Wahad. We're talking about building a united front against fascism. We are pressed for time, but I want to invite you back on next week to kind of go in depth, because I think that this is a logical advancement when it comes to, our liberation movements. We have a number of different fronts out there, not only of African people from the Native community, groups like AIM. We have groups who are descendants of the Young Lords and et cetera, sort of like what you all have done in the past that like you said, that we can build off of. Right now, as I mentioned earlier, as the preacher man says, it's getting late in the evening.
Yeah, this is what I wanted. I didn't want to cut you off. I kind of digress, but then specifically about the comrades that ran independent political campaigns. And I wanted to say to you, because we talked about this, we should try. They all endorsed the idea and the concept and the theory of a united front, but they were heavily involved in their own individual campaigns, and we will be trying to be patient with that to allow them to do their thing. And if we look at their campaigns, basically all of the basic principles of healthcare, community control of police, they all shared the same concerns and the same principles and of empowering working and poor people. So I would like to see us get together. I would like to get Cornell, Sister Claudia, and Dr. Stein all together so that we could have a larger forum on the United Front. I think they should take a leadership role. When I say leadership, I don't mean that the front is organized based on them, but because of their campaigns and because of they've come out to try to popularize the very principles of a united front. I think they should be the first ones to commit to contribute to building this united front. Whether it's by providing platforms and fundraising opportunities under their venues and under their flag, or us doing united efforts. And this really is important too when it comes to political prisoners, because I think all three of these brothers and sisters have a clear principled position on political prisoners. And so we need to get them to be more vocal on this. So I'm suggesting that we have this kind of convocation with these three comrades and with some leadership from the legal front, whether it's the NCBL or the National Lawyers Guild. We need to have a sit down like this, and we need to have this in public, and I think we should do this within the next 30 days or so. So I would like to throw that on you and some of your other comrades, that let's get together with our comrades that had independent political agendas 6 months ago, and I should have a working framework for a united front, which I do have on the computer already, that I'm going to try to get out before then. And so I think that I would like for your platform to reach out to these brothers and sisters and ask them to come on board and vociferously advocate for the formation of this united front. We have to have a third political force in this country, you know, and this force has to be rooted in the concept and the principles that initially the Black Panther Party had with the Rainbow Coalition. You see, but this is far more advanced than that, because fascism and white supremacy and ethno-nationalism has come a long way since 1970 and 1969. They've consolidated their power. What they used to whisper back then, they say out loud now. You see, and so they're deploying the military into cities near you, and so we are guaranteed that we will have to fight whatever few principles of democracy that's left under the auspices of under the big umbrella of corporate duopoly fascism. So yeah, so let's call these brothers and sisters together and let them to lend their voice and help to building this united front.
It's a done deal. We'd like to thank Garuba Ben Wahab for coming on. This is Black Power Media. We will see you in the whirlwind. Stay tuned. Till next time, we're going to build this united front against fascism. Peace.